Welcome to Perspective, and on this second part, today on State of the Nation, we discuss marginalization, and most going to focus on marginalized counties. Well, marginalization is a consequence of a skewed process of distribution of scarce resources. It has been interpreted as the process of social exclusion from the dominant socio-economic, cultural, and even political structure. According to the Constitution of Kenya 2010 defines marginalized communities as one or more of the following: a community that, because of its relatively small population or any other reason, has been unable to fully participate in the integrated social and economic life of Kenya as a whole, or a traditional community that, out of a need or desire to preserve its unique culture and identity from assimilation, has remained outside the integrated social and economic life of Kenya as a whole. Or even an indigenous community that has retained or maintained a traditional lifestyle and livelihood based on a hunter and gatherer economy, or pastoral persons and communities, whether they are nomadic or settled community, that, because of its relative geographic isolation, has experienced one or two marginal participation in the integrated social and economic life of Kenya as a whole. That's the Constitution. Well, and today we are privileged to be hosting one of the leaders from the marginalized communities, and joining me is Isiolo County Women Representative Rehema Jaldesa. Karibu sana, madam.
Asante.
Thank you indeed for making time for us.
Thank you.
First things first, devolution. How can you rate devolution, and especially coming from a marginalized community in your county?
Thank you so much. Let me start by saying that devolution in principle is a good thing.
Yes.
And it is, the framers of the Constitution really had a good intention. And therefore, in that part I say, well, it's good we had it. But in terms of implementation and where we are so far, I will rate it maybe at 50% success. And this is because we are in the second phase of implementation of a devolution,
yes,
but we still have a lot of challenge. The current one being the kind of the wrangles between the National Assembly,
yes,
and the Senate,
indeed,
in as far as resource allocations are concerned. Therefore, we are not yet there. And sadly, it is not working as it is intended by the principles behind the devolution principles.
Perhaps what are some of the issues that could be addressed now before anything else that perhaps can make the 50% to be at least rise to around 70 or 80%?
Well, there are a lot of issues that needs to be looked at. The element of capacity,
yes,
in that probably we were not as a country so much prepared,
yes,
even in terms of just the frameworks,
yes,
to handle devolution. And then of course there is the element of corruption, which is the main challenge,
yes,
that hampered the success of devolution. And then, well, I must say we have tried to put structures in place to ensure that at least the element of prudent utilization of resources will be in place. But still, you know, human beings being clever they are,
yes,
there's always a way of people, you know, moving around the frameworks to still. And for that, I don't know what we'll do. Maybe it's an issue of our mindsets. We need to cultivate the culture of integrity into people. But from where I sit, I see we're still struggling.
Still, yes.
And probably I'm hoping that when we look at issues of changing governance, probably things like health should find its way back to the national government. Because I strongly believe that the counties are not very much prepared to handle issues of health.
Yes.
Okay? And probably even issues of things like water. Okay?
Yes.
We really should start interrogating ourselves whether the counties have the capacity, to handle such. Those are the things which are very instrumental, which are very needed, and therefore I feel like we still have a long way to go.
Indeed.
Yes.
This year, the government, through the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, in the next 5 days, will be holding the census, the national census.
Yes.
There have been calls that some of the issues were not addressed, and especially for marginalized areas and communities, were not addressed in the last census. What are some of the key issues that perhaps they should focus on this time round?
Thank you. Let me even take you back to your definition of marginalization.
Yes.
Which in my view is sort of very academic.
Yes, yes.
But
yes.
in where I sit, and being from one of the counties where we have been marginalized,
yes.
and we still feel we are being marginalized, is that marginalization has many parameters.
Yes.
One of it being the poverty index. Secondly, historical injustice. The land mass. Okay?
Yes.
Among others. And the census has come at a time where we are still struggling to get out of the marginalization. Much as it is defined in the Constitution how it should be addressed, we're still struggling. Why am I saying this? Let me take you to one of the parameters, which is historical injustice. The historical injustice has, for example, the issues of land.
Yes.
Now we are in the process of doing the census, but we have the land issues that are not addressed. For example, Isiolo County, where I represent, borders Meru, borders Samburu, borders Wajir, and borders Garissa. We still have boundary dispute,
Yes.
which has not been addressed. The census is coming, and one of the processes of doing the census was the mapping,
Yes.
which were done like 4 or 5 months ago. When the mappings were done, there were areas because of disputes that were not clearly captured. For example, in Isiolo County, we have a whole area in Isiolo South constituencies which were not captured as Isiolo. And yet, it is, if you look at the map, it is in Isiolo.
Yes.
Because of those historical disputes. When now the actual census will be done, those areas will be left out, meaning the people living in those areas will not be captured. Therefore, we will not have an accurate, credible census process.
Yes,
Number 2, the month of August is a month where drought is its peak. And most of the pastoralist areas, and we are talking about 14 to 16 counties, the pastoralists will be moving from one place to another
Yes.
in search of water and pasture for their animals. We have not put structures in place to ensure that those people will be counted wherever they will be.
Yes.
It is an issue that we have addressed with the Ministry of Planning time and again. And the government has assured us that they will put measures in place, including availing water,
Yes.
including ensuring that those pastoralists will be, properly taken care of.
We are it's 5 days to the D-Day.
Yes.
Has those efforts started yet?
At least in Isiolo County, I am not seeing anything. And therefore, I'm worried. 9 years ago, we had the census, the same problem. And we, in Isiolo County, were told we have a population of 200,000, which is not true.
Indeed.
Okay?
Yes.
Now, we are likely to experience the same problem.
Yes.
NDMA did something called the drought assessment. Isiolo County is one of the counties that are put in an alarming stage, meaning that the completely vegetations are gone, there is no water, there is no food. So people have started moving all the way to Ethiopia, some have gone to Somalia. Therefore, the principles of census itself, as I'm explaining to you, we have lost it, because the census process must be credible, accurate, devoid of any political manipulation. So as it is, we cannot say it is accurate. Okay? So I am, as a leader, I am worried. We are all worried.
Let me ask a question. Has there been any efforts perhaps to mobilize people and also inform people about the coming census? Has there been any efforts?
Honestly speaking, I have not seen a serious civic education that is being done by even the ministry. And probably at our own local level, people talk about it, everybody, but I haven't seen that serious mobilization. On top of that, the issue I've just raised about the dispute. We have a dispute even between the Meru and the Isiolo County. The same case. It has not been addressed. And it is not something that I am just talking about. It is something that is documented. It is there. The government knows about it. So really, for me, as a representative of Isiolo, I'm worried about the credibility of the census process. And therefore, the elements you raise about marginalization will be with us for the longest time. Because the reason why we are doing census is because the population will be one of the parameters for resource allocation.
Indeed.
It is one of the parameters for government planning. Therefore, I feel like my people will be denied their rightful share of the national resources. And
perhaps I can touch on this because you're also a legislator. In those, most of the marginalized counties also face the challenge of insecurity. And the enumerators sometimes may be forced to be knocking doors at night for enumerating people. What do you see a big challenge when it comes to security?
Yes, it is a challenge that was also raised because we've had a pre-census meeting with even the ministry. Probably that I cannot comment because they promise that the enumerators will be given adequate security. I am therefore hoping that that will happen. But in terms of civic education, I am worried, and I'm appealing to the government to do something in these remaining 5 days.
Derka tells me we need to pick up the pace. And now, to the next question on referendum. Actually, now it's not a question of if the referendum will come. Perhaps you might be able to address some of the issues that you've raised. It's a matter of when. First things first, are you in support of the referendum, of a referendum in the country at the moment?
Well,
No, it's a personal question.
It's a personal question. And honestly, if you ask me, I don't know whether constitutional amendment is an immediate concern for ordinary Kenyans.
But some of the issues that you mentioned might be, might be addressed in the referendum.
If referendum will happen, of course, referendum has two processes. Under Article 256 and 257. It is either a parliamentary initiative or is a popular initiative. And the one I can now talk about is the one that has come
been tabled
through the constitutional process. And the Punguza Mzigo has some very good proposals. And it also has some questionable proposals, motives. Having said that, I am still of the view that even the first, the 2010 constitution is not fully implemented. For example, the 2/3 gender rule, that should increase the number of women representation, has not been achieved. So therefore, in my view, it doesn't make sense. We want to amend the constitution that is not fully implemented. Yes.
And mentioning that, there has also been calls that the women rep seat should be actually, to us, should be scrapped off. So if we have to really punguza the mzigo, what's your take on this?
Well, first of all, you cannot consider 50% or above population of this country to be a mzigo. So that itself is not in good faith. Number two, the position of women rep is so much protected in the Constitution. It's an affirmative seat position that is there so that we have women represented. Yeah. So really, I don't see it making any sense. But we need to punguza mzigo. That I agree with you. Because this country, we are really struggling.
Yes.
We have debts that will be paid by not even your generation,
yes,
or maybe even the generation of your children.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And from the look of things, we are not likely to get out of that anytime very soon.
Yes.
Therefore, for me, any additional burden to Kenyans will really be punishing this country. Indeed. But there are other things that we need to do in terms of inclusivity, because we don't want to look at a situation where every election cycle, Kenyans have to fight or go to streets to destroy properties.
Yes, indeed.
We need to have a way of including maybe if the run-up of a presidential, you know, by creating a position of an official opposition that was there, but was removed.
An inclusive government.
An inclusive government.
Oh, unfortunately, we are out of time, but I really need to ask you about the new Ammama Initiative, kindly in less than a minute.
The new Ammama Initiative is an initiative where, as women members of parliament, felt that we needed to come together and put our own resources and go back to our different counties and constituencies to inua the mamas who are mashinani, to empower them economically. So every time we go, we put together a resource of about 1 million, 1.2, depending with our numbers. We contribute a figure of 50,000, yes, among us ourselves. It has a huge impact. So far we have been to like about 15 counties.
And I had to ask, because actually it's really gaining momentum, and it's really commendable of you as legislators. Yes. Indeed. Yes. Thank you so much indeed, but we've run out of time.
Thank you. I wish we had more time to even discuss more about this referendum. Yes. Thank you so much
we
for
definitely should create more time.
Yes.
Definitely. Thank you so much. We have been talking about focus on marginalized areas and communities, and Honorable Rehema Jaldesa, who is the Isiolo County Women Representative, graced the show for us today. Indeed, thank you so much. Business is up next with my colleague, Alan Aoko. Thank you so much.